Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to the Living Your Greatness. Today, we have a special guest. His name is David Morgan. So for those of you that don't know who David Morgan is a widely recognized analyst in the precious metals industry and consults for hedge funds, high net worth investors, mining companies, and bullion dealers. David is the publisher of the Morgan Report, a world-class publication designed to build and secure wealth. He is the author of the Silver Manifesto. David's main job is educating people about honest money and benefits of a sound financial system. David has appeared on CNBC, Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, BNN, and many other news channels in Canada. He has also been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, Futures Magazine, Investing Rules Book, and numerous other publications. Thank you for making time today, David, to be on the show. It is a pleasure to have you on. You are definitely one of the more recognized experts in the precious metals space.
Well, Ben, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you. I'm sure we'll have some fun.
Awesome, David. So, David, let's kind of start off here. Can you start with your background? Where are you from in the United States? And can you tell us more about your formative years?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. I was born in San Francisco, California, lived in that Bay Area for a couple of years. And then when I was about a first grader, we moved to San Diego. Did grade 1 through 6 in San Diego County, moved back to the Bay Area, went through junior high and high school in the South Bay, San Jose area, off to college in the mid part of the state. Wanted to do what I'm doing now. My dad didn't want anything to do with finance, so he sort of pushed me hard and said, "What's your second choice?" I said, "Well, I'd like to fly." So I started flying when I was 16. By the time I was 19, I had every rating you could get except a CFI. I didn't have a certified flight instrument instructor rating, but I was a certified flight instructor. Taught a few people to fly while I was in college, got out with my aeronautical engineering degree. Started working for one of the main aircraft manufacturers, and then I was picked up by Lockheed in their dark programs, the Skunk Works. So at the same time, I still have 40 years experience, and I do because I was always interested in metals. The currency or the metals change, the coinage changed when I was 11. So I went from 90% silver coins to Johnson slugs. And that made an impression on me, more of one probably than I realized at the time. And so early on in my aircraft career, one of the test pilots whipped out this financial newsletter and started reading to the other test pilot. And I'm in the back seat listening as a 20-something-year-old kid. And he's talking about, what's going on. And so I was acquainted with kind of an alternative media in those days. It wasn't the internet, but there was this alternative media from these pretty deep thinkers called newsletter writers. So I got acquainted with that from a test pilot, started looking at it, and that started kind of my second career. Even though I was in the aircraft industry, almost all of my free time, I had my nose in a book or listening to in those days, cassette tape, and learning more about the honest money system and, what's happened, how the banks worked. And I knew about the Federal Reserve. And in fact, even in the early days of the internet, you get ridiculed for talking about that the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. Of course, now everybody pretty much knows that. But so that's it. So I started trading silver. I started trading stocks at 16, which is a special case if your parents sign a document or something. So always been in finance. That's where my heart's been. I've been investing in the junior mining through top tier miners since I was basically 18. And so you might say I had like two careers in the beginning, went full time into the financial field, like in my 30s, worked for a certified financial planner, didn't like how that whole system was set up, did work for a coin dealer for a very brief time, didn't like the way they pushed the semi-numismatic coins. Consulted for a while, worked kind of on and off, traded for a living for a while, was okay at it, wasn't like perfect, but did okay. And then had the opportunity really to just launch into the newsletter business, which is where my passion is. When the internet first started, I was one of the early adopters, started a research website, and someone got a hold of my phone number or whatever, called me up and said, what does the Silver Guru do? And I said, well, I write a newsletter. And he said, how much? I made up a number. I've been in business 12 milliseconds. What do I tell this guy? And I gave him a number. He said, fine. So I levitated. I was so happy. I'm actually going to make a living doing what I really want to do, what I'm passionate about. And then I did the one hand clap. Wait a minute. What did I just do? I told this guy I'd write everything I know about the markets, especially silver, for 1 year for $60. That does not sound like early retirement to me. So it grew from there. And here I am, 22 years later, and having a lot of fun and enjoyed the path. It's like the silver market. It's up and down, and can be way up and way down on certain times, but overall, I've tried to keep my hand steady on the tiller and steered my way through the rough seas. And I'm just very, very passionate about what I do. And as you read in my bio, my main purpose, I think, is to educate people about sound money, sound financial system, why that affects everybody, and go from there. So probably talked a little longer than expected, but that's sort of like the life story in the last, 5 minutes or so.
Awesome, David. That's great story that you have. Can you expand a little bit more though? How did you discover the silver space?
Oh, that's good. Reading all the newsletter guys back in the early days, almost all of them were gold centric. Not too many talked about silver. And then I was in the futures markets, and I did a really, lucky move, I guess you could say, in the gold market. And then it went up. I sold, not at the top, pretty close. And then after it collapsed, I was very curious on why did the hunts go to the silver market, not the gold market. Of course, they really were in both, but at that time, the information we had, it seemed like silver was our only investment. And so I was curious, started looking at the silver market, started finding out there were some guys that were the specialists kind of in the silver market. One guy in particular named Jerome Smith, and he had, what's behind, he wrote Silver Profits in the 70s. I actually have a copy of that book. That's a booklet. It's all paper. It's a paper cover, actually. And then Silver Profits in the 80s, which was pretty famous at the time. What's behind the coming currency collapse, what's behind the net new boom in silver, and a few other books. I've actually talked to his son some time ago. But so when I started subscribing to that newsletter, it was called Economic Research Counselors at the time. And, I'm going to sound biased. I am biased. But to me, judging what they wrote on the economy, the macro picture, the Swiss point of view, they used to have a section called the Swiss banker's point of view, I believe, or something like that. I thought the silver guys were smarter than the gold guys. It seemed like they had a little bit better handle on the macro picture, a little more in-depth numbers and analysis, and making the case for silver over gold. So that kind of started my path. Then I ran into a gentleman, and we've been friends for decades. His name is Franklin Sanders, and he wrote Silver Bonanza. And that was sort of the silver Bible. In fact, that was one of the reasons I wrote the Silver Manifesto, because his book had become pretty much outdated. There's still good information in it, but I wanted to publish something that would be, the silver Bible, more or less, that others that wanted to could pick up that manuscript and then take it from there to the next level or whatever. So again, probably a long answer, but you asked, that's the answer.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. So you are known as the silver guru in this business. I'm sure you don't come by that reputation lightly. How did you earn those stripes?
Yeah, I saw that question that you sent me ahead of time, and I kind of had to laugh because, first of all, the Silver Guru is just totally a casual whim. I mean, I used it because I needed a domain email address that was separate from my private one when I started the website. So I just came up with Silver Guru. So I came up with Silver Guru at Hotmail. Taken. Silver Guru 1 at Hotmail. Taken. Silver Guru 5 at Hotmail. Taken. I go, what the heck is going on here? So I typed in silverguru22 at hotmail.com and said, okay. So that was my domain or my business email for the first year or so. So that was it. But did I earn the Silver Guru? And I'd say, yes, I did. And of course, there's others in the field and a lot of people. But I was at one of my earliest conferences in the Wealth Protection Conference, Phoenix, Arizona, years ago. I think it was like the third time I spoke in the public. And the host had, pretty happy with my presentation. And he goes, okay. And he didn't call me this, so I'm exaggerating slightly, but okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, we've been hearing about the silver deficit for so long. And, I've had people up here, for years, and they tell me, this is going to happen. And it's never happened. And, no one ever explains why it doesn't happen. So I went through and I explained where Jerome Smith made his greatest error and why, he said silver would be like $200 in 1995. And I was giving this lecture probably about 2005. So 10 years later. And, all these silver bugs had the expectation silver would be triple digits. And I explained he made a big error about the mining industry. And there was a technological change that dramatically changed the amount of silver being produced on an annual basis. And he missed it. And he goes, oh my God, you are the Silver Guru. So he goes, I've asked that question to everybody that's ever talked about the silver market for the last, 10 years, and no one has ever answered that question. And I've had a couple more like that. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm bragging, but I've had a few more. There's one, I think, at the, one of the silver summits, and it was an open forum, and someone asked some kind of a question, and everybody in the room, and I answered it, and do I have all the answers? No. Do I know everything about the silver market? No. Am I a know-it-all? No. I'm a learn-it-all. Can I learn it all? No. But I've spent a lot of time looking at the silver industry, and I obviously have a pretty good, background. So I guess you could say I've earned it. There's certainly been a few instances, like I just mentioned, where people say, oh, thank you.
Awesome, David. You are a great writer. Can you tell us more about the Silver Manifesto? Why did you write this book? What will we learn from reading this?
Yeah, I kind of went over that. Purpose was basically to hand pass the candle forward, so to speak. There'll be somebody somewhere at some time that says, silver really is important. And I think we got to keep, all this information in some kind of format. Maybe it'll just be an ebook or a long lecture series or something. So I wrote it for the purpose to kind of carry the message. What's in it? It's basically A to Z. Have I covered everything about silver? No. I did use the silver bonanza as somewhat of a template. I didn't go in like the options market and the futures market like Franklin did. But I did do a better job, or let me say, we're such good friends, I don't want to offend him, but a more in-depth job on the history of silver. And the history of money is the history of silver, really. I mean, everyone talks about gold is money and that's all it is, and blah, 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 blah. That's partially true. The real history of real money is really silver. So we go through that, and we talk about manipulation, and I make a chapter about that. We talk about fractional reserve banking, what's immoral about it, fractional reserve bullion banking, what's immoral about that, how the silver market's manipulated, and on and on and on. And finally, how we pick a mining company, what's the criteria we do for that. And finally, toward the end of the book, the last chapter, I think, is called Beyond Silver. And I wrote that sort of as an open-minded thought experiment piece to let everybody know that, one, money is important, but it's probably not the most important thing in life. That there could be a situation in the future where going back to honest money might just be a stepping stone to something else. So what we need in the system is honesty. Do we have to have silver or gold in the system to make the system honest? No, because history teaches us being on an honest money system is only as good as it lasts. Because even if you're on a gold coin standard, which is about the most infallible system you can have, people learn to cheat, or they start saying, well, I'll give you credit for your gold, and they write it on a piece of paper. Then the pieces of paper start being exchanged instead of the gold itself. And it just morphs off because man is imperfect. Tendency is to, not everyone, but there's a tendency to get something for nothing, or to get an edge on your competition or whatever. Just cheating. It happens. And is it everybody? Is it pervasive? No. It can start with one and become pervasive, which is basically how the whole Federal Reserve System is. So that's so being on an honest money system is as honest as the honesty of the people behind it, not the money itself. One of my early lectures in the Silver Valley about honest money, and one of the professors, we're pretty friendly now, but he was very adversarial to me and was basically yelling at me while I'm lecturing that the gold standard doesn't work. And I was taken back because I've never been confronted during a speech. Maybe after the event, I would always be very polite and I'd go up to him privately. I would never do that in front of an audience. But regardless, that's what was taking place. So I basically said, look, gold's an element on a periodic chart, coveted as, money by, thousands of years. It's not gold's fault. It's the people behind it. If the people say there's more gold than there actually is, it's a human problem. It's an honesty problem. It's an integrity issue. Started getting this big clap, the audience. And so I got done with the lecture. It was lunchtime. I'm walking, through the hall. It's very small. There were like 100 people at that lecture. And he just got furious. He said, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you next year. I'm like, what did I do to this guy? Just because I had a good explanation of why it's not gold's fault the gold standard doesn't work. It's a human problem. It got him pretty upset at that time. So anyway, let's move on to the next question.
So David, you're not just a silver guru, you're also known for standing up for people's well-being, which you've already mentioned, and you have your listeners' best interests at heart. How do you think silver might be part of an eventual global financial reset?
I really don't think that silver will be incorporated into the next monetary system. I'm not sure gold will be. I can, Ben state with some emphasis that the powers that be want to go to basically a one world currency. They may do it on a nation state basis for a while and then blend it into one. I think the central bank digital currency is what the Fed wants, Federal Reserve. And so it'll make the Federal Reserve the only bank in town. There won't be all these commercial banks. It'll be basically controlled by the quasi-government entity, the Fed. But where will silver fit? Well, right now, I think where it'll fit is it'll be sort of the real money, hard money, honest money movement on overused term on steroids. I think what will take place and is taking place is there are alternative currencies that are cryptos that are backed by precious metals. And I think as this system continues to have stress and people start to understand more about value than price and realize what value is and how undervalued the metals are and how valuable they are for long-term wealth preservation, and that the next decade is going to be more about losing less than gaining more because there's going to be such a contraction and dislocations throughout the entire global economy that there'll be a lot of people that will be able to buy silver and gold on a gram by gram basis, which is impossible to do with the current system. They'll be able to do it with their phone. They'll be able to trade the ratio with their phone. So if, the gold silver ratio is favorable to swapping gold to silver, you can do it with a, almost instantaneously, half a second, click it and say, so in my gold, I'm buying silver, or vice versa, exchange and all that. So, and plus you're able to take the hard asset if you want. In other words, there's limits, and there's limits in all these silver saving programs now, or gold savings programs. I mean, you have to acquire a certain quantity before you're going to get it in the mail. You can't get, 2 grams of silver mailed to you. But so I think that's the move. And plus it'll be so much easier because North America buys most of the silver now. It's very easy. America buys most of the silver now, but it's because it's pretty easy. But, you get other areas like Asia, a lot of Europe, actually, South America, even though they mine a lot of silver. So if you have a crypto backed currency with silver and gold, and you can just sign up, get your wallet started, put your fiat in or your Bitcoin or whatever it is, exchange it and move it into hard metal. The easier it is, the more adaptable there will become for people to do that. So I think that's the next wave. So I don't think it's going to be part of the official monetary system, but I think it could become an adjunct to whatever they throw at us. And I think there'll be the ability, and I don't know, this will have to be determined, that you could stay within a certain space and not ever have to adapt to the authoritarian system. Now, that's a stretch. It could, or, and that again remains to be determined, but you might be able to stay within a space of a certain platform that is friendly to other platforms, that moves between different cryptos, some being precious metals backed, some not, some having certain functions with streaming or cobalt or whatever. But within that, let's say, bandwidth, and never have to adapt to the central bank digital currency. Now, I could be wrong on that. And just to be consistent, I have said that my thinking currently is that, the central bank digital currencies will put as much control as they possibly can, like they do now, even more so. And you couldn't get a mortgage without a central bank digital currency loan, or you couldn't get a car without a central bank currency loan. But people that are more or less outside the system now, they're in the system, but they don't have to use credit. So they've got enough savings for whatever, or enough cash flow because they own a business or whatever it is. They're in a position where you don't have to have credit. Those people could probably stay outside the system. That's my guess.
Okay, great. So moving to my next question, do you believe that silver is more an industrial, monetary, or strategic metal, as Keith Neumeyer would add?
Yeah, I thought about that when I read it last night for the interview. And the late, great Harry Brown, certainly one of my mentors, ran for Libertarian presidential ticket twice. Got to know him pretty well at the end, near the end of his life. And I didn't like it when I heard it but you grow, you mature. But he said, well, silver's, I forget what he said at the time. He went something like, well, silver is a 30% industrial metal, 70% monetary metal, because at that time, only 30% of it was used for industry. Now it's about 50-50. So I go along with Harry that, it's 50% industrial, 50% monetary. And with Keith, I don't really know what to comment on. I mean, I did read it and I thought about it, but, the Silver Eagle program, which is officially the Silver Liberty program, was mandated by Congress and started in 1986. Came from the silver strategic stockpile. The United States used to hold silver in a strategic stockpile. You can look up the word strategic. But then these congressmen or Congress critters decided, well, it's really not that strategic. It's just taking up space. Let's turn it into coins and sell it to the public. And that's what they did. So I'd say it certainly is a strategic metal. There's no doubt about that. As far as, how does that play against industrial and monetary, I really don't know. The one piece of data you cannot get from anyone, and no one ever even addresses it. And I've got every silver study going back to Handy and Hardman. Look that up. I mean, they've been out of business a long time. But is military use. So you've got, there's industrial use, there's silverware, there's jewelry, and then there's investment demand. You get those 4 pieces of a pie chart. But within that industrial component, you never see military use. So let's say that military use is expanding at a greater rate than overall industrial use. In other words, industrial use keeps expanding, but the main reason it keeps expanding is because the military use of silver grows more than any other area of industrial use. Hope I'm making sense. You wouldn't get that data anywhere. In fact, that's my overall analysis, because when I read the two silver studies and I compare the CPM yearbook with the World Silver Survey by the Silver Institute, produced by Metals Focus now, it appears to me that the amount of silver used for electrical and electronics has grown a great deal, but it's sort of flattened out. But yet we keep seeing silver's overall industrial use go up. Well, if it's not in the electrical electronic world, where is it? And the answer, I think, is military use. But I probably went too far down the rabbit hole. But again, this is the way I analyze the markets and think about the markets. And you probably never even heard that discussed before in any show I've done. So there you go.
All right, great. Thanks, David. Are we at the cusp of a new uptrend in precious metals? Would you expect silver to outperform gold?
Yeah, I've given that lecture a long time, and several times. You could get it for free on the internet or on my blog. But I've pretty well talked about silver goes 90% of the move comes in the last 10% of the time. I think we are in the third leg up. I think you're going to see the biggest move in price over a relatively short duration of time. Meaning you could see silver go from, don't quote my numbers, it's just for the idea, watch it go from the $12 low of 2020 up to 120 in 2024, that type of thing. There are others that make a big and strong and accurate, and I would say accurate, we don't know the future, but a good case that silver will be the bull market for the next 10 years. And they make a good case for that. Most markets accelerate at the end. They go parabolic. I mean, look at what Bitcoin's done. And I say Bitcoin is done, as far as its overall bull market. But, broke out at 10,000, went to 65,000 in a matter of, a couple of months or so. And that's a parabolic move. And most markets do that, especially on their third leg, especially a secular bull market like the silver market and the gold market is. You get a leg up, you get a leg down, you get a leg up, you get a leg down, then you get that huge leg up. And then once everybody's convinced that only houses could go up, and Ben Bernanke gets on national television and says, you can't fail by buying real estate. We don't see any problem in the mortgage industry. That's when you have the collapse. So I'm well aware of that. I think gold and silver will spike. I'm not sure about gold. If it's used in the monetary system or adapted in some way, then it'll probably do a T formation, do that parabolic move and then get pinned to a certain quantity of gold backing up crypto, or, a national crypto or a central bank crypto. It's possible. I don't know the future. And that would stabilize it. Silver, I don't think would be used in the monetary system. For silver to be used in the monetary system, it's got to be valued like gold is valued as a monetary asset. And since there's less of it in investment form, or what the banks could use as investment form, it actually, in that terminology, common sense, you'd say, well, if there's less palladium than there is gold, it's more valuable. And if there's less platinum than there is gold, it's more valuable. Well, no, the market says not. But silver, there's less than gold, and it's 1/66 the price or so right now. So to make it money and make it viable, it would have to be more like what the natural ratio is, which is like 1/10 or something. So I see the price could get there, but I don't see it get there because the banks adopted it as a monetary.
So David, this brings me to my next question. What are you expecting silver's price to be by year end?
I already wrote in my report $40. I think we'll see 40. I don't think it'll stay there very long. It could. It's very tough. I mean, I always play the game because people want me to. If I get lucky and I get close, then, I get some accolades. If I'm wrong, I get some ridicule, but that comes with the territory. But I think we're going to get into the 30s here pretty soon, probably by end of summer. I think we'll be seeing maybe $30 as the support level rather than the resistance level. And then we could go up to, 35. I mean, will we hit 40? I don't know. I'm pretty certain we'll see, lots of prints in the 30s going forward, and we will get a new base. And once we get a base of 30 or 33 or whatever the market determines, that's going to get a lot more interest in the silver market, especially as, again, we see the contraction in the physical economy take place.
So David, should we expect a correction in the S&P market in the next few months? If the market does drop, will it take the price of the precious metals with it? How about the miners?
Yeah, whenever you get a large sell-off in the equity markets, it takes everything down. Almost everyone in the equity side is leveraged, especially the professionals. So whatever hedge they have, which is a lot of time gold or gold futures or ETFs that are margined or whatever, they'll look at whatever they've got, sell it. They're not biased at all. They'll just look whatever the computer says to sell, or look at whatever is red or green and do what they have to. So yes, if we have a big sell-off, it'll take down gold and silver. It will take down the miners. Similar to what happened in 2008, you will see the gold market lost the least, but still lost. And then it was the first to turn around and come back up. And silver followed closely thereafter, and the miners followed that. So I expect the same thing. If there is a sell-off, a big crash, it'll take everything down, but gold and silver will be beaten down temporarily and then reassert themselves rather rapidly.
Okay, great. David, in the last year, there has been a lot of talk about Bitcoin and its performance. However, there have been some companies in the precious metal sector that have outperformed Bitcoin. Abra Silver Resource is an example of a junior mining company that has vastly outperformed Bitcoin over 18 months. And the precious metals have been in a 9-month consolidation phase. The precious metals appear to be warming up for its next move. Could you share with our listeners what you expect to see in the coming 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think we're going to continue the early stage of phase 3. Like I said, 90% of the move comes the last 10% of the time. If that holds true again, which you could prove that it took place from 1979 to 1980, I mean, silver went from $6 in 1979 January to 50 in January 1980. So you had a like 800+% move in about a year's time. So if you do the arithmetic, you'll find it was like 87.5% of the move came in like 7.5% of the time. Will it be exactly that? No, I'm just giving the idea that you get this explosive upward move at the end of the cycle. So what will the next 6 months bring? It'll bring us closer to going parabolic, but I don't think it will be parabolic, or maybe just starting. So that would take us to the end of 2021. I don't expect this real moonshot to take place until 2022, 2023. And I've been wrong before. I'll admit it. We'll see. I think the main factor, and I've said it in other interviews, is it's psychological. I mean, there's nothing that correlates more negatively to the stock market than gold does. And so when everything is losing, when the real estate's losing, stocks are losing, even bonds are losing. Stocks and bonds are not as negatively correlated as most people think. And gold is. So when the run to gold starts, when there's nowhere else to go, basically, real estate's not a hideout, bonds aren't a hideout, equities aren't a hideout. Where do you go? And there's all this money looking for a home, and the run to gold begins. And people that never bought gold, pension funds that never owned it, money managers that used to poo-poo it, individuals that want to get out of the banking system buying it. All these factors come and synergistically work together for a variety of different whys. They're moving into gold. All those whys don't matter to gold. It's got this huge demand, this what I keep calling the run to gold. And when that happens, I think it's going to go down in the financial record books, because the amount of capital, quote unquote, currency, I should probably say, that's going to be looking for something safe. And there's only one place. And of course, there's cryptos too. There will be competitions. I mean, you could buy at a lumberyard, for example, or you could buy, farmland. So it's not just gold, but for all practical purposes, it's just gold. So you'll see this run to gold, and that, of course, will take silver with it. And silver is a smaller market. So I think you'll see silver surpass gold in percentage terms. And the game is on. Now, I've been saying that for years. I've gotten, chided for it, and that's fine. I think the main point is no matter how much you believe me or don't believe me, the idea is you don't bet the farm on that scenario. You take a hedge position on that scenario. So if I am right, you're protected. But if I'm wrong, you're not hurt. And that's probably the most important words I said during the interview.
In March, Tesla announced that it was in the company's plan to accept Bitcoin as an accepted payment. In an open letter to Elon Musk, you suggested that Tesla should consider accepting payment in silver and or gold through the LODE project. Also, you spoke to the Investing News Network and said that LODE is a sleeping giant within cryptocurrencies. Why did you write this letter to Elon Musk? Could you please explain what LODE is to our listeners?
Sure. The best thing to do is, rather than me explain it and confuse people, is just go to the URL https://ag.lode.one. So if you go to that URL, you'll get on the LODE website. And there's 2 or 3 videos that explain the system pretty accurately, succinctly, and kind of in a fun way. And you can determine. So obviously I have invested silver, because the only way you could actually contribute and get involved with it was through silver at the very beginning. Now there's gold allocated to it as well. But, it's not for everybody. It really should, well, in my view, be for everybody. It is for everybody that wants it. It's not for everybody that needs it. Everybody needs it, but very few people would understand that. So it's for people that want it. And I'll leave it at that. I am an ambassador. I do represent it. I do have an investment in it. So therefore, I can't be completely objective. But just to go a step further, when it came out like 3 years ago, I told everyone, including my paid subscribers, that, let me take the risk, stand by and watch and wait until the system's up fully, and then make a decision whether you want to get involved or not. Well, a lot of people that follow my work, especially my paid premium members, they are willing to take the kind of risks that I'm willing to take. And many of them adopted early and came on board. And my first initial investment into LODE actually has performed extremely well. Not maybe Bitcoin well, but pretty well. So pretty happy with the return, but I didn't do it to make a return. I was hoping for one, but I did it primarily because it fits with my main purpose, which is to bring honest money back to the honest people.
Okay, great. So David, what is happening with Basel III? Could you explain how the bullion banks would be affected and how this could affect the physical market of precious metals?
Yeah, that was the one question I spent a lot of time on last night. I mean, just to re-verify what I'd already read. I don't think it's going to have a huge effect. I think it may take some of the bullion banks that'll just give up. They'll say, look, we have to expand our margins. The trading desk is only performing, 3% of our total intake of what we do as an investment bank. And let's just cut that desk out and get these guys out of here. It's really not that profitable to us. So I don't think it's going to have the effect that many of my peers have said. Could be wrong. I'm not certain, but I did, again, go over it. My take right now, and again, we'll see, is that it will not have that large an effect. It's, some people have actually made, from what I've listened to, and maybe I didn't listen correctly or, hear it right, but it could affect the LBMA unallocated silver position. Well, this is only a gold edict. It talks about, making gold a tier one asset. It says nothing about silver. And the other part, and I'm going to sound a bit conspiratorial, and so be it, but just because these banks pass these regulations, what's the last time that you, Ben, saw every bank adhere to what the authorities said? I mean, look at what some of the banking regulations are, and how many times JP Morgan has paid a large fine for disobeying them. So if you think that just by writing something down on a piece of paper is going to change the way these characters perform, you might want to rethink that.
So David, if we take a look at the miners, I read recently that Ross Beatty has stepped down as a chairperson at Pan American Silver. No doubt a big change for the company. I know that you and others recommend management as an important decision point when selecting miners. Do you think his absence will change the future success of the company?
I do not. I think Ross is absolutely, one of the most capable in the industry. And we have a pretty long history. I'll have to tell you, I thought about this, reading the questions last night, but Ross and I met at it was a private meeting actually. And I think it was over in a hotel in Seattle, if I remember correctly. And there weren't that many people in this little meeting room in a hotel. And Ross was talking his book, Pan American, and doing an excellent job. And, I'm there, was invited, and, kind of got into this battle of, I would say battle, but this discussion. And it was obvious that he thought he knew more about silver than I did. And I'm not saying I knew more about silver than he did, but it got to be sort of almost like a contest. So I decided, I could see he was getting a bit perturbed. So I backed off, and he finished, and that's where I really got to meet him. And, I had just the highest regard for him in so many ways, but have to make this comment because I hadn't thought about this for years, but then when you wrote the question to me. So after that meeting, we broke for lunch or something. And again, there were not many people in that room. And the CFO at the time and I were pretty friendly. I didn't really know Ross that well. And he said, do you know who those two people at the next table next to you were? And I said, no. And he gave me their names, which all remain anonymous. But they were meeting with Warren Buffett for lunch the next day.
All right. So that leads me to my next question. What other mining executives do you respect?
Well, that's a tough one. I should have gotten out a piece of paper and written down a huge list. And, because whoever I leave out will probably have their feelings hurt because they've known me and we've had dinner together or whatever. So I'll just be very brief. Most that are in the top tier category having a Morgan report, I have the utmost respect for. So you're talking to Silver Wheatons, Franco Nevadas, or I should say Wheaton Precious Metals, Agnico Eagle, in the old days, Gold Corp, tons for Dr. McGaw with Mag Silver, Pretium, Robert Quartermain. So almost anyone at the top level is there because they're top, Phillips Baker, Hecla. I mean, Phillips has just done an excellent job in my view. Yeah, he stubbed his toe a couple of times, but he's admitted it and moved on. So I'd say anybody that's in my top tier, cash rich, unhedged, primarily unhedged portfolio, anybody that I've picked on that is because of their management ability. So anyone in that category, I won't name every stock I have in there. And then almost everybody I have in the mid tier, and I won't name any of those stocks. And then on the speculative side, Bill Sheriff, I'd have to say something kind about. Bill's kind enough to ask me on the board of the private company Group 11, where we're looking at in situ mining using the EnviroLeach technologies, secret formula, you might say, that's environmentally friendly, huge game changer. So I probably left a few out, but there's a lot of really good, dedicated people that have taught me a lot, on my journey. And I'll make one more general comment, and hopefully, rather than name a lot of names, I named a few, but I think I named the companies which are as important. Well, a great friend, haven't had contact for years, but Dr. Bill Green taught geology at the University of Idaho. and lived in Spokane, probably still does. Like I said, I've lost contact, but he told me very early on, in fact, right about the time I started the newsletter, and said, if you find the right people, they'll just keep working until they find something. So he taught me very early on. And Doug Casey talked about it and others, it's people, people, people. And it sunk in. But when Dr. Green said that to me, it really sunk in. So, and I've certainly picked some real dogs on the junior side. I mean, picking penny stocks there's no art to it. It's luck. At least I believe it is after 40 years. That's why I don't spend a lot of money in there, but we spend a lot of time. And, but there again, it's people. I mean, you get the right people in these smaller cap companies that have done it once, twice, or three times. You've got pretty good odds that it's going to happen again. So I'll leave that part of the list off the record for now. But we have a few in the portfolio that's based purely on the fact that they've done it before.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, David. For the benefit of millennial investors like myself, can you recommend how we should allocate $10,000 across the precious metal space? So for example, ETFs, metals, miners.
Well, being young, you could afford to take more risk, but I'd say maybe 10% would be in actually hard money. So you'd, buy 10,000, put 1,000 into physical silver or gold if you want. And then 90%, I'd still look at the top tier and be safe. So maybe 7,000 into 2 or 3 really strong royalty companies, like maybe Wheaton Precious Metals, Franco-Nevada, and maybe you could take Pan American Silver as an example. And then, so you've got 8,000, so you've got 2,000 left. Probably at the millennial age, I'd take the 2, usually be 1, but you can gamble more when you're younger. So take the 2,000 and find the 10 best juniors you can find. Look at their story. Ask yourself if the story is even believable. Find out if the people telling the story are storytellers or miners. And then after you've determined as much as you possibly can, take that list and ask yourself why you would want to own that stock 10 years out. And if you can answer all those questions, then find 10, put in $200 in each of them, and you're going to lose on 4 or 5. They'll go to absolute zero. On 3 or 4, you'll probably double your money. And if you've done everything I told you, there'd be 1, 2, or 3 that'll go to the moon. So that's the way I would do it at your age.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. What commodities do you think will perform best in 2021?
Food, agriculture, energy, maybe alternative energy. And it's hard to say on the metals. I think, perform the best. I think it's going to be the agricultures, and I think it's going to be areas in the supply chain breakdown that breaks through. The physical economy is deteriorating at a rapid rate. It's really horrific how bad it really is. And most people are really unaware, because until they walk in that grocery store and there's a padlock on the front and says we're only open 4 days a week now, until that happens, most people are going to just ignore the reality of how bad the food situation is and how bad the supply chain situation is and what the large contraction in the physical economy truly is. So it's rather scary, and I'm not trying to scare people. I hate playing the fear card, but I'm a realist. I always have been, I always will be, and I'll try to say it as unemotionally as possible. But the amount of food destruction that's taking place on this planet right now is almost beyond belief. So I would say that's my number one choice. Energy depends how it goes with what's going on in the Middle East, what's happening with the fracking industry, what's happening with the lockdown. I mean, right now, you can get by on a lot less energy because, look at the cruise lines, look at the aircraft industry, the airline industry, I should say, and how much demand there is relative to how much demand there was, say, in 2018. I mean, my international travel schedule in 2018 was, I don't know, maybe 18 trips. It wasn't that many, maybe 6 trips internationally and 18 trips for the year that were business related. And last year I flew for business, once, and for semi-business twice. I had like 3 international flights the whole year last
Good picks there, David. So David, you've been very generous today with your time. Where can my listeners find you?
year. Yeah, I actually have multiple domains, but just to make it simple, the main website is themorganreport.com. Just go on that. There's a little ad basically about the free newsletter. Sign up for that. But when you're on the site, there's some tabs at the top. Just get on the blog. You should be looking at the blog for free. And on the blog page over in the upper right-hand side, there's direct lines to the Twitter, which you should get on if you want to get most of the tweets I do myself. Everything else is handled by staff. So, well, I do some of the LinkedIn myself too. But so the Twitter feed, the LinkedIn feed, the Facebook feed, the YouTube channel, and everything else is up there. So you can, if you so desire, follow us on social media. If not, just go to the blog. Probably 3 times a week is sufficient. I do a weekly update called the Weekly Perspective. I try to keep it to 15 minutes or less, looking at the global empire and what's going on in the financial markets primarily, usually start with the stock market. And then I always try to end with something in the precious metals that's pertinent to, everyone. So that's just one thing. I mean, I do interviews like this all week long. We post them on the channel as well.
Great, David. I will make sure to add those into the podcast notes. David, once again, thanks for being on the show. I hope to have you on again in the near future.
Well, Ben, it's been fun. It's been a fairly long one. I'm not sure if anyone's going to watch it all the way through, but yeah, you dove deep and you got me. You got a few stories I've never told before. So hopefully people that have followed my work and can't get enough of me, which I got enough of me. But anyway, it'll be. I think it'll be fun for some of the viewers that kind of one of those quirky kind of stories, like the one with Ross at the hotel, and these couple that I didn't even know who they were until the CFO told me, and then knowing that they were having lunch with Buffett the next day, that got my hair to curl a bit. So,
absolutely, yeah. Thanks again, David, for everything.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be considered personal, legal, or investment advice or a recommendation to buy or sell securities or any other product. It is based on opinions, current events, press releases, and interviews, but is not infallible. It may contain errors, and Living Your Greatness offers no inferred or explicit warranty as to the accuracy of the information presented. If personal advice is needed, consult a qualified legal, tax, or investment professional. Do not base any investment decision on the information contained on Living Your Greatness or our videos.